Welcome, everyone. Kansai Plascon are the sponsors of our Future Focus panel today. They continue to look ahead and understand the importance of consistently pushing the limits of innovation while seeking groundbreaking new technologies in support of the industry's goals while improving the future. It's fantastic to see so many familiar, esteemed industry faces in the audience today. And together, we hope to imagine the future of our built environment. A few questions. Can we hold this future in our sight and see and share the trends of tomorrow? Think of how we worked 20 years ago, and now imagine 20 years into the future. How would we be designing, building, shaping, making our environment? In what ways that completely changes the game? Imagine what if was not just a hypothetical, but a forecast. We need to ask bigger questions if we are to achieve this feat. Today, right now, Scape is offering the industry a voice and a platform. What do you think it would say? 4 brilliant minds have joined us today on stage to consider how their jobs might look in the future and how our industry might transform in the coming decades. Letting go of the now, we're asking our esteemed panel, what comes next? It's my pleasure to introduce Founding Director of SAOTA, Stefan Antoni. To those in the audience, most renowned for his prolific career designing world-class residential architecture across the globe, but at the studio, fostering dialogue and debate around revolutionary advancements that will continue to transform the industry and the world of design. Today, Stefan will be interrogating the risks of elimination posed to architects and what the consequences could be. Following Stefan, and as an expert in his profession, David Cohen brings a highly experienced perspective on the future of development of properties. As managing director of one of South Africa's leading property development firms, Signatura, David has been involved in some of the most iconic urban and suburban residential builds in the country, making him a voice to be heard on the future of the industry. David will be exploring the idea that when fostering change, we should not only consider innovation, but revolution. The final panelists today are 255 architects led by Krige and Theo Kruger. They are known for their exciting, inspired designs. Their dynamism is evident in their vibrant spaces that they create, really setting the standards for an imagined tomorrow. Andrea and Theo aim to inspire curiosity and instigate change through imagining design from the garden to the city. They will investigate the impacts of densification on future city life and how this will look moving into the future. Welcome. Yes.
Hi, everybody. Lovely to see such a big turnout. And hopefully it's going to be worth it. So to make sure that it hopefully is worth it, I decided I'm not going to speak off the cuff as I far normally prefer. This is a topic that is not my comfort zone. In fact, when I got here, I thought, what if this little talk of mine is probably more like what when, meaning that it is happening, and then you can have in brackets a kind of what if, because there's a second half to this whole point, to this whole story. Okay, and hopefully you can join the dots, because there are a lot of dots that you've got to join, so you've got to be sharp today and also keep me on my toes. Okay, so there, the next big thing. We live in fascinating times. To even predict 2 years ahead is challenging. There are major shifts happening. Will the world population carry on growing indefinitely, or are we heading towards population collapse, as amongst others Elon Musk has said? The current empire is crumbling. Power and economics are shifting to the east and even Africa, with its meaningful human and mineral capital. But will humans remain valuable, or will they become a useless class, as said by Yuval Noah Harari, the author of Homo Deus? After imagining it for the past century, AI is suddenly here and starting to have meaningful impact. Should we be concerned? Transhumanism, according to Harari and Musk, is soon here. So what about architecture and the built environment? Okay, so I studied in the early 80s. In 1983, my prac year, I recall our office got a golf ball typewriter, then a daisy wheel typewriter. Sure, that was serious progress, I can assure you. But I'm sure most of you don't even know what I'm talking about, because I'm sure you haven't even heard of a daisy wheel or a golf ball. But bear with me. Okay. That's the daisy wheel. Okay, by the end of that year, we got an Osborne 1 computer. It's the first commercially successful PC. And I got to say, and I wrote it here, and I got to say it as I wrote it, what a flippin' pathetic nightmare. Okay? And if you want to understand why, come speak to me later, and I'll explain to you how the Osborne worked. And I was tasked with the job, okay, we got to introduce the Osborne and the computer age into the office. Whoa, okay. And then the Apple Mac was launched at the 1984 Super Bowl. Ironic, or maybe not so, that date coincides with a very famous book by George Orwell, one that's worth rereading today. He got the date wrong by some 50 years. In my final year, in 85, salespeople came showcasing CAD. Can't say we were very impressed. The drawings were basic, crude, and lacked any architectural poetry. For the next 10 years, we discussed its merits, while it was largely ignored by most firms of architects. Can you imagine the world today without CAD or Revit? I tangibly remember the first fax machine coming into the office in the early 90s. And again, some of you don't even know what a fax machine probably is. That just shows you the pace at which progress happens. And I got to say, wow, it really was the first miracle I'd ever witnessed in my life. It was just, I remember, I can picture the scene as that drawing came through from another architectural office, and there it was, and it's like, wow, that's absolutely crazy. Okay, changed the way we worked. No more snail mail, drawings and instructions sent and received instantly. It was revolutionary. Incidentally, I did my thesis using a T-square, okay, which I Googled yesterday to see, actually ChatGPT, because Google didn't give me the answer, kind of when was it invented, and they said sometime in ancient history. So I did my thesis on something that hadn't changed for thousands of years. Okay, we take it for granted, but the rate at which we can generate and produce work today is exponential. We produce hundreds of 3Ds with the click of a button. Virtual reality, I'm just jumping a bit too fast. Virtual reality, something that we pioneered with Lux Walker 5 years ago, is now mainstream and used by everyone. Another wow, being inside a design and experiencing it, making you realize how exceptional past architects were in visualizing this all in their minds. I must say, I still am baffled sometimes when I think of the incredible modern buildings, the incredible buildings from the past, and there was no technology to help you imagine what it was going to look like inside. And yet, no matter how much computing power there will ever be, I'm not sure if a computer could ever design a Ronchamp. Okay, we're halfway there. Good. So 20 years from now, will there even be architects? Okay. Now I'm going to press this and hopefully, yeah, okay. Or will there just be skilled operators who enter the required info and automatically generate an avalanche of options for consideration, so-called prompt engineers, which I must say I only found out this term a few days ago, that there's a term called prompt engineers. Will our roles, the few of us still required, be that of arbiters or assessors of AI output? Will the creative side of our brains maybe begin to atrophy. So that's the what if. The what when is the AI. So like we all do these days, I decided to ask AI. The results are more fascinating for the choice of words than the content, because to a large extent we know what AI is and we've heard all the things it can do. So focus on the words that to a large extent ChatGPT gave me, and I've added a few bits and pieces to make a little bit more sense of it. So here's the AI sales pitch using ChatGPT with a bit of added input from me. This image, by the way, is generated in Midjourney, reflecting the theme of this talk. So again, these days you just punch in the term, okay, I'm going to be speaking about this, give me a whole lot of images about talk. Okay, great. Okay, so this is it. Great. Yeah, we didn't design those ones. Okay. So now, the rest of the images that I'm going to show are SAOTA projects. Okay. They're designed now, but what I'm going to be speaking about is in 20 years' time. So you're going to have to do a little bit of multitasking here. Look at the images and know that's now, and in 20 years' time, I'm not sure what we're going to be doing, but maybe the words will give you a little bit of an idea of where we're going to be going. Okay, now these are the words from ChatGPT. So this, to a large extent, is not my wording. We stand at the precipice of a new epoch. Will architects still have a place? Will architects persist? Brace yourself for a journey that ventures beyond the boundaries of reality. Architects of the quantum canvas. Isn't that a beautiful term? The quantum canvas, the dance of humans and AI. Rather than rendering architects obsolete, I'm glad that at least GPT threw that one in, because I was getting worried at one point. Okay, AI will likely amplify their creative capacities, where AI isn't just an assistant, but a co-creator. And architects have evolved into visionary curators of an AI-infused reality. Fascinating words. Imagine a world where AI algorithms analyze vast data sets, predict design trends, and optimize energy efficiency, freeing architects to focus on the imaginative and human-centric aspects of design. While AI may assist in generating preliminary designs, architects will still bring their unique perspective, empathy, and artistic flair to the table. Picture an architect gesturing fluidly. Remember, we all love to imagine things, and I'm sure all of you architects and designers here, we kind of wish we could, like, in our mind, there's an image, our hands express it, but now we want it to be interpreted. I must just quickly throw this little one in. There's this beautiful video of Frank Gehry, and they were asking me how he designs, and he said, well, then I just take a whole pile of paper and I scrunch it and I throw it on the floor, scrunch it and throw it on the floor, and eventually there are about 40 pieces of paper, and then we all look around there and we say, oh, that's the nicest one. And then that becomes the inspiration for the building. And that's genuine. And so in a way, there's a little bit of a connection between that. Now I've lost my place, so just bear with me here. Okay, there, yeah. Okay, picture an architect gesturing fluidly, summoning holographic structures into existence. AI algorithms deeply embedded within their conscious, translate raw imagination into tangible blueprints. So it jumps from the imagination into a blueprint already. There's no drafting in between. Transcending the boundaries of conventional design. The result, buildings that defy gravity, twist time, and meld seamlessly with nature, all while resonating with the soul of the designer. Okay, so the expectations on AI are great, and on us, they're overwhelming, amazing, scary. A new breed of builders, where android craftsmen build dreams. Human labor and robotic precision has forged an extraordinary alliance, the human touch won't vanish entirely. Skilled artisans and builders will collaborate with machines, infusing an artistic nuances and attention to detail that only humans can provide. A symphony of earth and ether. You can imagine those two terms put together. It will not lead to a detachment from nature, but a deeper connection. Green architecture, biophilic designs, and sustainable and regenerative materials and practices are likely to take center stage. Real-time data from smart buildings will inform architects about user preferences, enabling dynamic adjustments to space, lighting, and ventilation, repairing and even healing themselves, the buildings repairing themselves, not the architects, by the way. I think we might need that as well. Okay. The dichotomy between technological marvels and our primal connection to the earth dissolves into an harmonious embrace, blurring the lines between the virtual and the real. Buildings will evolve into immersive experiences. Architects are not merely creators, but narrators. The cosmic dream weavers, crafting experiences that transcend into portals of alternative realities. Our primal connection to the earth finds its voice amidst synthetic serenity, and buildings transform into gateways to parallel dimensions. So now, I think all of you who have kids this size and lower know that alternative dimension is already there. I remember the first time I showed my son a project in the goggles, and then when he took them off, he said, "Sure, Dad, real life is so boring." It's like, oh, hell, okay, sure. I'm still trying to kind of process that one. Okay, buildings will possess sentience, aware of occupants' moods and needs. Walls shift hues to soothe frayed nerves, and corridors adapt their contours to accommodate differing physical abilities. The very air within our structures is alive, intuitively purifying itself for optimal well-being. Architecture becomes an interactive companion, enriching lives with intelligence and empathy. So I think, as I mentioned, there are a lot of parallel realms going on here. There's the human, the digital, the virtual, and maybe something beyond. And I think all of those are fascinatingly starting to come together, where they all are real in some sense or another. On the one hand, you can be terrified of it, as I sometimes get, a little bit concerned. Can this thing be controlled? Or will it control us? Or is there something in between? At the same time, it's absolutely fascinating, especially from a person who has progressed in one lifetime from a T-square to today. So I'll just end off by saying some of us will want to hurtle into the unknown. Some of us will want to embrace our primal instincts, and some or many in between. I just hope that these will all be allowed to and be able to coexist together. Thank you.
Everybody, I was given the fancy mic because I was asked to pace like a traditional TED Talk, so I'm just going to start moving around and then just keep following me. First, I wanted to thank Scape for inviting me. I really feel like a fly on the wall because I could be the only one here not trying to get any CPD points. So I appreciate the effort, and I feel like the little capitalist in the corner, finding out what all the cool kids are actually talking about. So thank you for inviting me. Thanks, PlasCon, for allowing us to do this. We were asked to, the future. That is a difficult one because we really don't even know what's happening, in a week, in a month, certainly a year or two down the line. It's a really difficult discussion to have. 20 years, sure. Also, because I'm probably the least creative person in this room, given that you guys are all architects and landscape architects and whatnot, there was no way that I was going to sit here and try and come up with some fantastic theory about this. So as the developer in the room, unfortunately, I feel like I have to bring us a little bit back to reality. But I'd like to do it in a way to make us think actually how important your roles are as essentially the planners of how we exist in the environment. So here we go. What are our basic needs? I mean, I know we all know this, food, shelter, clothing. It's the trifecta that allows us to basically exist. Everything else is kind of superfluous, if you think about it. Now, think actually for 2 seconds. I'm going to stop. Think. You have nothing else. You only have food. You only have clothing. You only have shelter. You'll be actually okay. You'll be okay. You won't get the new iPhone. You don't have the new car. You don't have this. You don't have that. But actually, you can exist and you can survive. So what do we wear? What did we used to wear, I should say? Okay, wait, I have to keep pacing. We used to wear, probably not, but this is what ChatGPT told us we used to wear. Then we used to wear something else. We wear this now, probably not, maybe it is. Although, I did a brief count of how many people are wearing black in the audience, and I'm sorry, as architects, you wear a lot of black. Same thing with, what did we build? This is the Pantheon in Rome. What did we used to build? We built buildings like this. The original was built almost 2,000 years ago. We built a building like this about 100 years ago. And Robert is building, hopefully, this for me next year. There are some similarities. I don't know if you picked that up. They're all kind of made of concrete. Just remember that. Everything is changing. I actually listened to an interesting podcast about, there was a whole industry that was broken up about 100 years ago. And it basically flung a large number of working women out of work, they were telephone operators. Someone invented the automatic kind of connector, and there it is. Tens of thousands of people laid off. Now I know that's a very relevant topic because AI and, will any of you have jobs? I mean, the bricklayers are going to have jobs, just so you know, but I don't know, will you guys have jobs? It's a question. This isn't changing, though. Not that because it's Parliament. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to the UK. But buildings and how we approach them are not going to change. Because, again, I don't know how to bring it back to a real core. We live, we work, we inhabit these places. Everything else could go. I could take the microphone off, the clicker can go away. As long as we had some food and we weren't running around naked, I guess in some place we could have done that, we will be, it is such a core that I don't know if you guys realize how important your influence is on how we, the non-creative people who ingest your creations, how we give and how we live and how we act around each other. And I think that statement, probably more than anything else, kind of sums up, where are we in the next 20 years? You guys are using the tools that come out, and whether it's a T2, which I have to admit I didn't know what that was either, but I didn't know what Midjourney was either until someone pointed it out to me a few days ago. This is such a core function of who people are that the importance of it cannot be understated. If you look at value, real estate, property, whatever you want to call it, it is the single largest asset class in the world. Nothing else beats it, not all the shares of Google or Apple, or actually Google, Apple, whatever, all of them combined, doesn't actually get anywhere close to all the real estate in all the world. So that's a lot of capital, and why can't we change? Why can't we just come up together and there's a new algorithm, or there's a new this and there's a new that? And mostly that's because, people look at this, which is a CLT tower in Germany, and if I did a poll, I promise you 100% of the people wouldn't think one thing about it. Some would say, oh, it looks very nice. Other people say that's trash. Someone would say, no, this is great because it's a great example of sustainable building. And other people said, it's just a passing fad. Because buildings and how we inhabit them are such an intrinsic part of how we live and how we identify as people, for 100 different people, you'll probably get 100 different opinions. So I think when one thinks about the future, and whether it's in 20 years or 50 years, and whether we are using AI to basically write our speeches or to create our buildings, in the end, as humans, we still refer back to anytime we do something that we think is almost primitive, we're like, oh, that's my caveman brain, or that's my this. So why? Why do we do that? If we're like, no, we're living in this world and we're doing all these new things and we're using AI and we're using this, but we still have this intrinsic need or belief that we're actually no different than any of our ancestors that have been inhabiting this world for tens of thousands of years. So whether you are designing the latest cave, I think it's important to know that that connection that started at the Pantheon and maybe ends up like this, that's important, and you guys are actually the arbiters of how we on the other side look at things. So thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Theo.
I'm Andre. And we're very privileged to be here. We're going to try and be quick. We thought we had like 15 minutes and we only put like 70 slides together, so we'll try our best. We lead a small team and we're very fortunate to do so, and we're privileged to have quite a few of them here. It's actually Omit's birthday. I told him I'll give him a shout out, so that's him. Happy birthday. So we're not that old. We started in 2015. Since then, we've, as of yesterday, actually handed over our 120th project in the last 7 and a bit years. We've completed projects of various scales and in various sectors, but I would say 70% of our work is in the field of urban densification. We have designed far more micro apartments or nano apartments, or I'm not even sure what the term is anymore, than we can remember. And we've spent so much time figuring out how to do single cores, single stair cores, to do highly efficient buildings. And that's basically what we try and do on a daily basis. We've pushed the limits. We've gone to a site and put 96.2 square meter, 96.2% of the usable area on the site we effectively used. We put that up 9 stories. That's 3 meters of 0 meter building lines. 35 apartments on 190 squares, to put that into perspective. Within that 19 square meters of usable area, we've done a 4-seating dining area, a study desk that automatically pulls out of a cupboard. Sorry, Robert, we had to use a drop-down bed. It was necessary because we only had 19 squares. We had a lounge, we had plenty of storage. So this was actually designed as an Airbnb hotel, but at the end of the day, COVID happened and no one wanted Airbnb hotels, so we ended up with units that people wanted to permanently live in. So we had to change quite rapidly, hence everything you kind of see there. And I think we're still pushing this limits, and we're currently busy with just over 70 projects within the field of densification. But it's still not enough. We still need to do better.
Yeah, so what if, and how can we design sustainable adaptive areas that actually grow with you as you grow old? So if you marry, if you get kids, and if you grow old, can you still stay in the same space? Yeah, so any densification suffers a lot of opposition, and as Robert also mentioned previously, NIMBYism, it's not in my backyard. where people don't want high-rise right next to them, which is fine. But that is something that needs to be addressed and will need to change if we actually want to densify properly. Yeah, so this is an aerial photo of Cape Town in 1983, thanks to NASA. The quality isn't great, but you'll see quite a lot of farmland and plots, green areas in between all the built-up areas. And in 2003, you'll see a lot of these areas now built up, and also a new node called Century City. So I think traditionally as South Africans, we've always had a lot of space, and we just thought, okay, let's spread out over this space. Look at Joburg. Instead of fixing the CBD, we actually created a new one, Sandton, and then Rosebank, and then Melrose Arch, and then Midrand, and so on. So in 2023, where we are now, this is what we have, built up almost every single square meter, and we're sitting with a lot of immense traffic problems, which is very unsustainable for the environment and also mental health and other stuff. We've got a lack of public transport, and where people need to get from these low-density areas into commercial hubs. And we've got a lot of semi-dysfunctional business and retail hubs spread all around Cape Town that sort of function not as optimal as they could due to low density.
So today we're obviously talking about densification, which is a really important topic for us specifically as a firm, but it's also a really topic in considering the what if. Like, we cannot start asking what if this is not something that we're actively addressing. But first, a disclaimer. There's quite a lot of data in here. Please do not hold us to this data. We are not data analysts. But like most of us here, we wanted to know a critical question. I don't know if you guys want to know, so we wanted to know, what was the population going to be in Cape Town in the year 2043? So who better to ask than ChatGPT? It did need some prompts from us, but luckily Stats SA was ready with all the info as to what is the current population, annual growth, etc., etc. That's the answer, guys. We had a bit of a heart attack, but literally 9.78 million in the year 2043. To give you an idea, that's an extra 5 million people. Currently, there's 500,000 in Bloemfontein. So that gives you an idea. We're basically talking about bringing 10 Bloemfonteins to Cape Town. To put that in perspective, Bloemfontein has 54 schools, 60 primary schools, and 220 ECDs. We weren't done yet because we were having fun. So we asked ChatGPT how many apartments would we need to build to kind of cope with 5 million people, based on some critical assumptions, of course. 1.6 million. So that's 44 million square meters, about 1.9 trillion just for the apartments. And that's just actually the usable area of the apartments. Comparing that to Bloemfontein, it means in the next 20 years, Cape Town will need 540 new high schools, 600 new primary schools, 2,200 new ECD centers. It's quite a lot. That right there is 44 million square meters, 44 square kilometers spread over a single level on Cape Town, to put that into perspective. So picture this. In 2043, a buzzing, vibrant, healthy, happy city, or a disaster with strained resources, failing infrastructure, and very bad traffic. We don't need to picture it anymore. We asked Midjourney to do that for us. It didn't quite get it right, but you'll get the idea. So we can either have a much higher dense version of Cape Town where maybe we don't try to protect all the views of the mountain and just have some select ones that we're trying to protect, or we can keep on spreading horizontally just to protect the mountain views and end up with something that we really possibly don't want. So I think vertical densification obviously has some key critical benefits. It's been studied over and over again. University of Texas even found some really amazing stuff. But primarily, it's got shorter transport of goods. It's got shorter commutes. It uses far less resources to heat an apartment than it does to reheat a single residence home. But most importantly, it uses far less land.
Yeah, so we look at why it's important to speak about densification and really how if we as Cape Town actually reject the unsustainable path of urban sprawl and really opt for an upward-focused architecture going forward. So here we've got a snapshot of the Cape Town CBD, and the zonings in red indicate GB7 zone up to 60 meters high, and the blue GB5 and MU3 up to 38 meters high. So what we foresee it should be and should change to is a CBD that's actually GB7 zone with 150 to 200 meters high areas and a lot larger, bigger areas, and the areas around it, GB5, at a 60-meter building height. So, to put it into perspective, the Portland building is about 140 meters high, so it's a lot more of those buildings. So we look at how does this densification look like, and would we want it, or how do we process this? So we looked at construction cost over the past few years, averaging out at about 5% per year, and also the sales cost per square meter of apartments in the CBD itself, that averages out about 7.2%. That's over quite a period of time. So what happens is it creates a growing gap on the sales cost, and this either presents a problem where people can't afford apartments anymore, or it presents an opportunity for a solution. So as the answer is, it will get smaller. Space will be a luxury and it will get smaller. So we did an exercise in our office where we asked everyone in our office to look at a 21 square meter space, 7.5 by 2.8 meters, and we came up with over 60 different options of how to use the space. And some of them are quite expensive or quite elaborate with moving parts. And also a 21 square meter space, but 6.6 by 3.2 meter wide. So, and even more options on how to use this space. But having said that, most of them are seemingly unaffordable in today's terms from a commercial viability point of view. So we see in the future apartments becoming more like a Swiss Army knife, where it's not about how many rooms there are, but more how many functions you can fulfill in that space.
The logic for us is that we need to start looking at precedents of how this could potentially work. And lucky for us, white architects created this thing called Drömlägenheten, which is dream house in Sweden. And this is quite a fascinating project to dissect a little. And the brief they received was to create a 35 square meter apartment that could function throughout the lifetime of a small family. So we see this Swiss Army knife apartment, and for us the logic is that as we densify, we're going to need to want to build those people that are going to go and buy single-story residences quite far out. We want to bring them into the city, and that's the invitation. So how do we function in these smaller spaces? And I think this at the moment in our market is completely unaffordable. You can't. I can't go to David and say, I want to build you this Swiss Army knife. He'll never do it. But the logic is that gap that's coming, this is what's going to fill it. I mean, looking at Gary Chang, he's got this amazing apartment in Hong Kong. It's 30 square meters, but it's called the 24-room apartment. And it's this incredible concept of one apartment consistently morphing to fit various functions. And our logic is that at the moment, this is the anomaly. This is not something that we see every day. Within 20 years from now, it's going to be our norm. So now we start asking ourselves, is this enough? Like, will that attract us into these spaces? And we realize that as we're sitting at the moment, incredible things are happening in the space of NFTs and fractional ownership and the various blockchain technologies. And taking all of that into consideration, we're actually proposing that within this process, we're going to go into a thing that we've coined as hypermodularity, a portion where you start imagining every square meter of your building as tradable space. So rather as a sectional title that you would hold on, suddenly, because you can join all of this to a blockchain technology, you can start trading your square meters with your neighbor's square meters. So picture this, a young gentleman can only afford to go and buy 14 square meters because that's the way we're heading, but he's happy to do so because he gets to own something in Cape Town, which is beautiful and wonderful. Soon, he manages to get a bit of cash together and he goes and buys a token for access to the communal spaces because you're going to be paying for those as well. Now he can go to the garden. Pretty soon he meets a girl, he falls in love, and he needs a bit more space. So what does he do? Luckily enough, his neighbor is... her daughter just went off to varsity, so some space became available. So now his apartment's just shifting. There's no sectional title, there's no deed that's restricting him, there's no paperwork making it difficult to get that bit of extra square meters. It's a push of a button. Let's fast forward a bit. He then has a baby. He needs a bit more space. Go forward a bit more. Reality is, second kid's coming, he's got more money. Why the hell not have a 3-bedroom apartment in Cape Town? Social life gets hectic. Now I want a balcony. I'm pretty sure I can adjust my modular house. Why wouldn't I want to do that? Time goes on. Daughter's off at varsity. Varsity is really expensive because we're going to need to build 30 of them. I don't know if you saw. And logically, I have the benefit of now actually getting rid of my asset without getting rid of my asset. I can just pass on a few square meters. I think the next step now comes in. Life happens. You're all alone. One kid's up in Joburg working as an AI robotics counselor or something like that. And that's the logic. So we've realized that we're going to need to get used to the idea of smaller spaces. There are going to be those fortunate enough that's going to be able to own 50 or 60 or 80 or 90 square meters. Like I think that Robert's 80 square meter penthouse, that sounds really luxurious for what's coming in 20 years from now. But the reality is that we're not just talking about smaller spaces, we're talking about quality of life. And for us to have quality in life in the smaller spaces, we're going to need to start finding new places to move into. So our urban public spaces are going to be critical. So we, around here, this is the day where we get to start designing for happiness because this is where it's necessary. It's necessary when we tackle an apartment building to not go and create the Waldorf thing. It's necessary now to open that thing up to the public, to extend the streetscape. And I think that is what we see areas of growth in communal spaces within buildings, streetscapes, and extension of the public realm. So to conclude, the reality is we're going to go from the northern suburbs into the city. We're going to go from the garden into the city. The real question is, are we going to be happy?
Yeah, and we at 255, along with other architects, planners, and developers, think and believe that it's possible. We hope.
Thank you.
So I have a few questions for our esteemed panel. I guess starting off, looking at how AI platforms really can spit out information or images in record time, and really have the opportunity to speed up our processes infinitely. We're all cognizant of fast food, fast fashion. Do you think we're going to have accelerated architecture? And comparatively speaking, how do you think the speeding up of our processes will change our capacity to critically think, engage, and reflect, and deliver quality architecture? I'm going to pose this to Stefan and 255.
Okay, well, let me start with the first comment. Looking at your mid-journey renders, I found it fascinating how that it squashed Table Mountain. So, sure, that's a little bit of a worry. It's like Table Mountain's taking too much space in Cape Town. We need more land. So I don't know if it's thinking 2 steps further ahead than we wanted to. Dani, I don't have any answers. I don't know. I wish I knew. Listen, this is such a fascinating time that we're living in. Fascinating good and fascinating scary. Look, I've done some. I've only recently started looking into ChatGPT. So I know my colleagues have been doing it for many, many months and very successfully so. Very recently, I for instance, did something. I just took architects' names and I thought, like, instead of going to their websites and reading books on them and everything, let me just get a quick summary on them. And then I found, like, the 4 or 5 firms that I did this investigation on gave me these very generic replies to them, and then I realized that, hold it, it didn't give me the answers I wanted, okay, even when I prompted the right questions. So I think a lot of the future at the moment is still going to require brains. And I mean, and Dani, you know from certain projects, I very often I ask the question, so the solution that you're showing me, was this an AI or an HI solution? No, it's a HI. Sure, okay, human intelligence. Okay, because we've been testing it. and we trying to see how it can help us leapfrog. And at the moment, you leapfrog, but you leapfrog into a hole. So right now, I don't think we have the answers, and that's what I was trying to say. In my lifetime of 30-odd years, I've gone from a T-square to something that is absolutely staggering, and the growth is exponential. So I think in 5 years' time, I mean, David, you made the comment, and I almost got the feeling that on the one hand, and I also have a bit of that feeling but things won't and can't change that much, because buildings are buildings, and yes, you can print buildings and things like that. Okay, but on the one hand, things are changing so much that I don't know. That 10, 15 years time, maybe we will, for various reasons, be living in very differently built environments. Sorry, Dani. So there's my answer without giving you an answer.
So I think for us, we've kind of experienced on the ground what that means for us. We went from, let's take it, video meetings has taken our 2 weekly check-in with a client, or our 2 weekly or weekly kind of connection to a daily connection. I mean, the majority of our clients, we're in daily communication with them. I don't know who else is feeling that, who wants to destroy their WhatsApp, but that's how we feel. So, I mean, we have a client that I think because we didn't answer WhatsApp in like 56 minutes about what we thought was the correct way to redesign this facade, we started getting the mid-journey generated images based on what we've designed. So we already have clients that have this anticipation of this incredible rapid development. So I think for us, we used to have kind of a 2-week turnaround time. That's now a 3-day turnaround time. And we even find clients upset that they're waiting 3 days for stuff, which we think is not too bad. And so I think, especially in the way we work with clients, we've kind of realized that all this technology is making it a lot more collaborative process between us and our clients, and a lot less architect designer focused, which is quite an interesting thing that we're seeing happening at the moment.
That's fascinating.
If I can quickly, David, before you say something,
I wasn't
and
asked
I'm
the
sure.
question.
Oh, no, you weren't asked the question.
I'm very interested.
No. The thing that does worry me a little bit is that the disparity of the people who are moving at this lightning pace and are being enabled and empowered, and then all the people who just don't have access to this. And that's the one thing that does worry me. Again, talking about 20 years, 30 years time, and I don't know if you guys, I saw the movie Brave New World as a BBC, it's an old thing. And I remember seeing that there's this scene towards the end where the futuristic is super futuristic, but the people living on the ground are just living the way they always have and they always will. And if all of this technology can sort housing and poverty in the world, fantastic. And if it resolves all of this, fantastic. Okay, but if it exacerbates it, they'll be tragic. And I think, for me, probably the biggest issue here, we could have, in my opinion, have resolved poverty 100 years ago. The amount of money that gets spent on military equipment, et cetera, is so beyond astronomical. You could easily resolve all of that. But is there a will to do it? And is there profit in that? And I don't know. So that is where I suppose I'd love to, in 20, 30 years' time, come back here and say, guys, I was on the fence, but look how incredible this all turned out to be. So let's hope it is that.
I think that's a nice end to ask my next question to David in terms of the value graph that you showed us. I mean, that for me was fascinating to see that it's $162 trillion residential value. And just considering what Andre and Theo mentioning about concentrating on different aspects of our social hierarchical needs, do you think that value will shift over time?
Sure. I think it's an interesting one because I think, I think if we had this discussion 2 years ago, everyone would have said that office is dead and never coming back. I think we even thought on the development side it was certainly, and it might even be still in a bit of a moratorium. But look, I think it's only going to get bigger as populations grow and the fluidity of our spaces becomes more important. In the end, we don't all need an office and we don't all need a factory, but we mostly need a place to hang our head at night. I mean, it's a shameless promotion as a residential developer, but I mean, I don't believe that I'll be out of business in any time soon. Maybe I will. Someone won't, meaning there will always be someone building someone a place to sleep at night. Whether I'll be one of those optimized people or left in the dust, that's certainly a good what-if question. But yeah, I think that this fluidity of design is only creating more interesting spaces for people to sit, and it will only get bigger in that sense.
And just relating to Stefan's comment about inequality and poverty, I mean, in terms of the processes of real estate development, what social ecological patterns embedded in our built environment could change to make the market more equitable? Is it modes of ownership, which Andre and Theo alluded to? Do you have any insights to what could happen in the future?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is such a difficult one and quite a loaded topic, so I must tread very carefully about what I'm about to say. Look, it is very complicated. Everyone wants to live in the center or wherever, and I don't think that's actually changed in 2,000 years either. I'm sure if you went back to the Pantheon days, whoever lived right next door, that was the best place as well. I think it will actually get easier. One of the things that we often, whenever we have this discussion around whether with city officials or designers or whoever, urban planners, you talking about property without talking about transportation is actually ridiculous as well, to be honest. Especially in a place like Cape Town, it's actually not a big city. Many people, I'm sure, would have had the benefit of travel. Not everyone, but you can certainly see around. Transportation is a critical element because maybe it's not food, shelter, clothing, but it's probably number 4, if I could be honest, especially in the modern age. So without understanding, how people, move around. It's really going to be difficult to understand where's the best and what's the best thing to be. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we're going to open questions to the floor.
Dani,
Wait, no?
so I just want to quickly say something. In your premise or the ChatGPT output that you got was 24-something million. I would have been fascinated if you added the extra prompt, but ChatGPT, Elon Musk, amongst many other people, are saying there could be a population collapse because already Europe, population growth, it's declined. China, the one-child policy was abandoned many years ago, but the population is not increasing, and it is a concern to China. And of course, we know probably there will still be a growth for a time, but I even have read articles where there was a concern that kids are so preoccupied by screens these days that they are not as interested in physical sex as they used to be. Now, how do you reprocreate? Or is it procreate?
Yeah.
Sorry. If you don't do the thing, okay? And I'm saying this, but I'm like joking, but I'm super serious. My son, who's not a screen addict, but he's not far off it. We've managed to wean him off regularly, but his little cousin is. All of these kids, they rather do the overhead kick on the screen and win the World Cup on the screen, because when they try it on the field, it's actually flipping difficult and it doesn't work. So there's this kind of like, no, hold it. The other world is more fun because the real world's too difficult. I don't know, a little bit of that worries me because, again, I've read articles about the sex industry, the AI, sure, I'm going really off topic here, but anyway, it's fun. No, the AI sex industry is also growing exponentially because you don't have to worry about that awkward moment of, hi, what's your name, etc. You have your latex dolls hanging in the cupboard. You put your goggles on. You choose which beach or bed or wherever you want to be on, size, depth, whatever. Sorry, all of that kind of stuff. And well, sorry, but where the kid's going to come from? So, okay, just to throw the cat among the pigeons, guys.
We'll still have load shedding for that.
Oh, sure, thank goodness. Yeah, oh, hallelujah. I knew there was a reason for load shedding. Okay, guys, now you know why there's load shedding in South Africa. Okay.
So just out of pure interest in terms of the prompts for ChatGPT, we used figures from Stats SA, which we then pulled back quite drastically. And in the last year alone, 110 people effectively migrated to Cape Town. Our figures are based on Stat SA's prediction, less 20%, so just out of pure interest. Currently, the entire Western Cape is growing at a rate of 2.6% population growth, but the city itself is actually growing at 3.8%, which is quite high considering work. So we again use 2.6% as the Western Cape average. So there is, I hope, a little bit of hope for us. But yes, I think we are seeing in some places population decline. But I think with a country that has so much poverty, I don't think it's going to happen here anytime soon. It's like...
Yeah, one thing that I was considering now that you mentioned, the youth, and what McKenna Makeka mentioned earlier, through all the industrialization processes, we've kind of losing our skill. And if you look at some of your imagery, David, looking at the buildings that were, crafted over time, skills were passed from generation to generation, I'm just a little bit worried that we're going to lose some of that magic. I'm not sure. Yes, all of these platforms and technologies are tools, and they'll help us do things faster, make more money. But at the end of the day, I think what Stefan was alluding to is, are we losing a little bit of our humanity in the process?
I think it's important to differentiate between the operation and the implementation and the end product, if you will. I can drive a car. I cannot build one. I don't think that I'm any worse off it. At how far do you go back if when you have to do your first math test and you come up with this answer and your teacher's like, well, how did you get there? You have to show the work. At what point do you say, well, I don't need to show the work because I have AI? So I agree that you don't want to be beholden to this this kind of AI taskmaster, because if you don't have your own ability to create your own thoughts, then you really are just kind of in this 1984 kind of atmosphere. But where's the balance between that and the potential for additional free time, additional room for personal growth? I actually think, by the way, I wanted to comment, I think it is amazing that and I'm not sure because I don't really know that much about Midjourney, but you put things in Midjourney, you put this, and everything looks like this unbelievable jungle. Like, isn't it crazy that even AI is telling you, like, all you want to do is go back to your cave in the middle of the forest? Like, even though we're all thinking about the future and what's going to be, none of those images were like cyborg, completely stainless steel towers with no life or anything. We were literally, I think there were some floating bubbles with some trees in there. So I think there's like a root, like it's like your core IP as a human being, that you need nature, you need sustained community. Like how many of us, because AI will let us be, will be hermits living off on our own somewhere in the mountain by ourselves? I don't think that's a choice that we intrinsically will make. That's like our cave person mind saying, these are tools to optimize. yes, some people might be left behind, and that's a policy issue that needs to be also sorted out. Just like poverty, I agree with you 100%. It's what are your incentives and motivations, but I think there's roots, kind of our core that is we will use that for the same thing that we've been doing it for for 2,000 years.
Dani, just on that, sorry. If I
So I'm
talk
not
too
so
much-
worried about the no sex thing, is what I basically.
No. I'll keep off sex for a while. But interestingly, we were chatting in the office the other day, and the comment came up that we do a huge amount of work these days at such a faster speed. But how come? But how come? I don't know. There was like, but there's something stranger. No, and the comment was because the clients expect that volume and that detail and that complexity. So the goalposts have, like, I remember in my first 10 years, we used to do one hand-drawn perspective and Copic. That's another thing you guys don't even know what is. Copic pen, okay? And we used to Copic pen, ink it in, okay? So what I think is going to happen to some extent is that the expectations, and that's why I think there will become a big divide between the people who can provide it, the developers or the clients, saying, okay, guys, I want 10 alternatives by tomorrow morning. I mean, of course, they gave you the brief at 5 to 5. Okay, I want it by tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. And we're starting to build the next day, and I want it finished in a week's time. And it'll be, yeah, sure. And it won't be like, are you flipping out of your mind? It'll be like, yeah, of course, because it can be done. Okay? But somebody, somewhere in a poor area, will be trying to find materials, leftover bits and pieces, a bit of material to just cover their heads. So they're going to be, in my mind, at least two worlds. The one will be ultra-fast, immediate. And now, the bigger question is, and sorry, I had a little part that I deleted because I was scared it was going to provoke something, but I will say it now, seeing that I got my second wind. No, it was about, but what if I want to have a little braai with a choppy under a tree? Kind of, will I be allowed to do that? Will I be allowed to live a simple life? Look, it's my comment was a lot more complex than that, and I don't want to get into that. But I think that's why I ended off by saying, I hope while all this does move at lightning speed, which it will, okay, unless it all collapses, which maybe it could, a huge part of the world population will still, fire is a fire, and survival is survival, and you just got to hang in there.
Thanks, Stefan. Any questions from the floor?
Thank you. So I want to start by saying thank you, Dani. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, David. Thank you, Theo. And thank you, Andrew. My name is Deborah Chemonges, and I'm from Uganda. Disclaimer, it's a third world country. So I don't claim to be the best, but I'm more of a primal instinct person, like Stefan said. So my question is not even the what when, because I know AI has already happened. This question is now what if. And it's to everyone here. Why do we push for the AI agenda if it lacks human empathy? Are we moving more to the one people kind of generation without cultural diversity? I've not had one of the panelists today talking about culture. And for me, that's where my heart breaks, because are we losing identity? Are we losing our identity into space and form? Thank you.
Brilliant question. Thank you. Would any of the panelists like to?
I think if I can answer that, we as a firm have spent tremendous time asking the question, but how do we actually translate culture into design? How do we translate sitting under a tree and buying a chop into design? And the logic that we have concluded is that as incredible a task and a duty it is for us to consistently reimagine our culture, but also to consistently preserve our culture within a context like South Africa, that is a really, really hard thing to do, because whose culture? And the moment we start asking whose culture, I'm pretty sure we can put up a lot of hands in just this room with a big variety of cultures. And I think for us, we've realized that, and I think in our topic we meant it, like designing happier cities. Sure, culture is definitely going to play a role, but I think it's going to start becoming, I want to almost say building specific rather than city specific. So if we want to start doing happiness within a city, there's going to be key things that are going to spread past culture, things that are going to be more than culture, that's going to be consistent through all of us. And if we're not able to nail those things, we're going to fail. And I think that's, for me, the logic within our topic for today.
Yeah, no, it's a very important question. And again, it's one that worries me a little bit, because, think about everything today is instant, and it's around the world immediately. Okay, so we have this incredible pressure, and there's the good side to it, because with computer technology we can get people connected, we can get education to maybe places that one couldn't before, and people with limited means can have access to all of this information. Okay, so there is this value. Of course, there are lots of other issues with that. How accurate is that information? Is it genuine? Is it correct? What gets censored? What doesn't? Things like that. Who's programming all of that? That's another one of my concerns, because with all of that comes incredible power. And in whose hands is that power, and when that power is abused? And that's why I said that book 1984, and I'm poking quite hard there to say, guys, you got to wake up. The world isn't as wonderful and innocent as we always thought it was, or at least I thought it was. Okay? At the same time, we are definitely starting to appreciate and value marginalized people or cultures that we weren't aware of. And that's why I ended off with a very, very important saying, that we must allow all of these groups to function and exist, and no one must overwhelm the other. And that's going to be difficult, because if you want to compete in the future already now, if you aren't plugged in, wired up, and got the latest technology, you are going to struggle. So the pressure on retaining the cultures, the primal intuition, the values, sure, it's difficult. I mean, that's why on the one hand, like, we bought a little farm so that we can escape from the city. And especially after seeing your thing, I think I might be escaping Cape Town a lot sooner than... No, jokes aside. But why? Because for me, walking barefoot in the mud, okay, getting to learn about nature pests, because trust me, when you're suddenly on the farm, you realize that there's this whole natural world that is phenomenal, okay? But people in the city aren't even aware of it. I get bitten by 20 times more bugs there than I do in the city, and I used to curse it, and now it's like, wow, but that's amazing. There's life going on here, and like, well, it's sore, but it's real. So, but again, the pressure is ginormous, and I'm concerned that again the disparity, and sorry, coming back to the point, the very first point, the pressure of progress is something that is very difficult or impossible to slow down. So even when recently there was this comment about a moratorium on AI and slow it down, let's understand it and whatever. You can't do it. It's like the atomic bomb or something like that. Once somebody has it, the other one wants it, the other one wants it, because now one can't just have it, okay? And it's the same with knowledge and technology. Why should certain people have it and certain people be forced not to have it? So in the end, you kind of got to say, well, look, everybody has it. Can we act responsibly? I think we would, but will the people controlling us? And I'm not sure, and that's what worries me.
Sure. I just want to say that as a developer, I never thought that I would be the optimist in the room of architects, because it's very bleak in the moment. Look, you're right, but so I'm actually not that worried, and I'll tell you why. Because you know why there's no Google of global property development, even though it's the largest asset class in the world? And you'd be like, wow, why doesn't someone just come up with something and then they become the Google of this multi-million, trillion, whatever industry? And the reason is actually because of culture. Because the way we build and the way we live, even though we all do it in such different ways around the world. No one can apply. That's why PropTech's cock up, because you can't, unlike a software algorithm, you can't apply a hardware device uniformly across the global building market. If I create the optimal handle for digital access control in a building in Cape Town, and then I bring it to Java, someone's going to be like, but we don't open our doors that way. And so that's why, and why? Culture. Because they enter their house from left to right, and I enter it from right to left, or whoever. And I actually think that is our saving grace, actually. So smile, please, because it's like, actually, no. Look, I do agree that there's an AI, and I do think there are issues, and I certainly don't know enough about it. But I think that the fractious nature, or fractious is a negative word, but the differentiation in how we live and how we interact and community is the reason why I don't think there will ever actually be a one-size-fits-all type discussion. And I think that anyone who says that there's going to be this like global uniformity to how people live, as I said, it's such a basic part of who we are. I don't think that we would stand for it, so I don't see it.
Are there any more questions from the audience? There's one at the back.
Oh. Who's over there? Okay.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you. You guys made a very great impression. Your presentation was great. But to add on what the lady has said here, before I ask my question, I'm a student from CPUT. My name is Terence Itumeleng Mhlongo, and I'm an urban and regional planner. So she asked why AI when it is actually not saying anything about culture. And I'm also going to carry on from there, but it's not really about culture. But my question is, why is everything heading towards redeveloping the city and creating more space in the city? When the reality, and what I've seen while I was growing up, is that people come to city to work, and eventually when they retire, they head back in the rural areas. That's where they retire. And that population of 9 million, for me, I'm asking myself, how accurate do you believe it? And then the last question is, why not use AI to present the future of rural areas? Because there's future there. There are rural areas which homes are more or less clustered in a way that you would swear it's a township, just like where I come from, Mpumalanga province and Limpopo province. And lastly, why is only happiness based in the city when there are people in the rural areas that are happy there? They just need those people to invest in them. Thank you.
So I'm sure there's happy people in the rural areas, and
Maybe even happier.
yeah, absolutely. So we're trying to make the people in the city happy as well.
That's the
So I think we're just talking to a global trend that's happening all over the world, and it's happening in South Africa as well. So if you look at the stats, people are moving to the city to where economic opportunities are. So it's not that we're saying this is how it should be, this is just how it is, and it is happening that way. So it's also a much more sustainable way of living, and it's more cost effective for the government to provide services to all the people in a city than to rural areas. So that's a big reason where it's really a lot more sustainable and reachable to see if we can get everyone a dignified place to live. That's going to be in the city, and it's going to happen quicker in a city than it would happen in a rural space. So we're not discarding rural areas, and I think what we are saying is we need to provide spaces in a city where people can also experience rural, like with gardens and breakaway spaces and other areas, so that I understand we all have that longing to go to the countryside, and yeah, but that's the cities is where the economic opportunities are, and that's where the whole world is moving at this stage, including us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think logically you guys are asking really difficult questions for white guys on a stage. And it's the reality. I mean, but saying that, I mean, we just saw a thing now where Biden in America started a process of literally banning single residential use land in certain areas of America. That's like a new thing to say. You can't build your house anymore. This NIMBYism thing, like not in my backyard, it's a real thing. Like we've got people all over the world protesting because they don't want densification, but the logic is densification is potentially and most realistically the most sustainable future that we have, which is to one extent quite sad, but to another extent incredibly exciting, because we're in a position to now define what that will be. And I think what we're trying to propose is like there is incredible value in the rural areas of our country. I mean, Capitec built their entire bank around the microeconomy in South Africa. It's a logic. There's potential there. There's value there. So I'm not saying that isn't a priority within our country, but I think what we're trying to say is that what we're seeing now is that the city itself is unreachable and unattainable to such a big portion of our country. I mean, who here has more than R1 million to spend on 21 square meters? Not a lot of people in this room potentially have that money. And that's already today's figures. So if those prices keep escalating, it's literally CBD currently escalating on average at 7.2%. That's far more than any other area in the country in terms of price point. We're going to be in a situation where it's completely unattainable. So if we don't start changing the way we plan these things, we're going to be in a situation where we won't even get people from the rural areas here to come and look for job opportunities because it will be so far out of reach. And I think we have an opportunity to address that. And I think technologies like currently anyone in this room can immediately go online and within 15 minutes invest whatever amount of money you want in a skyscraper in Dubai. There's a thing going up at the moment that is all blockchain technology. It's all you go and buy tokens. I think the cheapest token you can buy is something like $500. That's not a lot of money. And they're effectively micro-funding a 100-story building, which is, and the craziest part is they're pre-funding it and they're already past 70% of their finance point, which is all, it makes the investment potential for someone in property so much more attainable. But now it's just an investment at the moment. Like, I think what we're trying to say is the moment we can turn that fractional investment into physical real estate, then we start creating opportunity for rural areas, low income compositions to actually have the opportunity to start investing and owning in the city?
Yeah, David, yeah. No, look, first of all, I don't think it's about optimism and pessimism, because architects have to be optimistic. Trust me, especially when we work with developers, we have to be... no, jokes aside, pulling your leg. No, but we are the visionaries. I mean, in the sense that we're always the dreamers, and we're always kind of imagining a better world and trying to find solutions. But I think we at a fascinating... That's why I said we're a fascinating point in human history. And we have to ask very, very robust questions. And if we're not, and if we're pussyfooting around, I think we're going to be marginalized. Look, I don't know, for example, in the rural areas, on the one hand, I like, well, keep AI away from the rural areas. On the other hand, maybe there's a way that one can use technology to get, to be able to build things quicker, faster, things like that. I mean, Joe Nowero once mentioned to me, don't build RDP houses. That's not the point, and you'll never catch up. Just create some kind of facility that people can get the materials themselves, and they can build the things themselves. And then it's like giving somebody a fishing rod and saying, yes, go fish, as opposed to giving them fish all the time. So again, I'm in no way saying that AI has the answers, all the answers. It's got some of the answers. And if somehow through all of that and a benevolent mindset on many, many levels, where leaders really care about the people, if somehow that brain power and that technology can go and work towards finding real solutions, that would be an incredible success. So let's hope that is where we are going to go. But benevolent is the key word, and it relies on really, really wanting people to live better lives, which normally is only driven by money.
There's someone up there. There was someone over here, just so you don't forget her afterwards. Okay.
Hello. Is it on? Okay, hi. My name is Owetu. I'm from UCT. I'm a student in architecture. I was kind of interested, especially in the developer, David, in terms of materiality. You kind of mentioned it very briefly. You mentioned that, like, okay, yeah, we still use the same processes in building our buildings, concrete, whatnot. And I recently was exposed to something called quick frame. And for me, it was kind of revolutionary. Again, I'm young, so it's very easy for anything to be revolutionary to me. But it was quite revolutionary in that it kind of tackled the issue with the small spaces, and you get to use more of the floor space because the materiality makes the wall actually thinner, and it's still as strong as using the concrete that we're used to. And so the question really is, now that I know that materials like that do exist, are there any other that might be on your radar that you might speak to, or any ideas that you have with materials that do exist and haven't been pushed far enough? Or I know the future of materiality in tackling the problems that you've mentioned here today.
Cool. You must have been a plant, because I'd love to actually answer that. First off, thank you. Materiality is really interesting to me, and I think that for you guys, I am the everyman, or every person, I should say. As a developer, all I am is representing the buyers or the renters or the livers who are gonna basically, and yes, you guys must be the creative people. I tell the architects that I work with, you must reach for the stars. It's my job to hold you by the leg and pull you down. If I have to do it myself and push you, then I might as well do it myself. And so when it comes to materiality, there are a lot of things up there, and there's a lot of it comes down to the financials and all of that. But even if you take that out of there, culture is actually really important. We did a development. We converted a office building in town from office use to residential. And I'm really speaking mostly on the residential side. Office, industrial, what you call a B2B type development or building. Business people, they're a lot less maybe sensitive to that kind of thing. But when you're in the consumer market, even the consumer investor market, because for some reason, and we sell mostly to investors, even if the people who are buying a lot of the apartments that we build are never going to be there, never going to sleep there, they seem to still check every apartment and check everything as if they were going to, it was their first house. So I think that, in this example, because it was a commercial building first, and the slabs were basically based on commercial loads, which means you couldn't knock everything down and rebuild it in brickwork. We had to use partitioning board, specifically made for audio and residential use, and for wet walls and for everything. And I don't know how many people who came to came and look at some of the show units that we put together. They start knocking on the walls and they're like, oh no, I'm not. This is paper, sawdust. I'm not buying. And you would pull out. We got an acoustic engineer to actually certify that what we were building from an acoustic point of view was better than a double skin brick cavity wall. But I can tell you there were people who would not buy because this material was used. It was not brick, and that's what you use when you build a house. So I think there is a lot out there. It's kind of like throwing darts at a wall at this point. What will stick and what won't. If the cool people, that's you guys, start pushing things to us, which are the uncool people, but we have all the money, to say this is what you should be doing. And it gets to the point where you don't even give me an alternative. That's actually where things start changing. So, and just to add on, and maybe there's a few guys out there, but I actively was seeking local architects who were trained and able to build from scratch a CLT, cross-laminated timber, multi-story building. And I don't want to say I couldn't find one, but you had to search under quite a few rocks to get there. So if I'm the developer and I'm saying I want to embrace this new thing because I do care about sustainability and I do care about the fact that we're basically polluting the environment worse than cars. Luckily, they get all the flack, but actually we're doing a much worse job than they are. And I can't find the craftsmen or craftspeople to actually help me. I basically just gave up. So I think if we want to take it seriously, it's going to require retraining, actually, and rethinking, to get these new types of materiality into the market. So people, myself, who don't have the creative bent and don't understand how these things work, can look at it and say, I think people who buy from me, they'd be cool with that. They're not going to, knock on the wall and, walk away because they don't think it's what a house should be built like.
My question is, as a developer, as designers, as architects, as visionaries, when I saw the statistics that 255 proposed, I got sort of heart palpitations. And then also when, Stefan, when you said, sort of like, what do we do about the poverty and what is that going to look like? So decades ago, I worked in England, and they have a system, whereas as a developer, if you are developing housing within the inner city, you have to provide a proportion of that sorry, as sort of social housing. And it has to be within a certain radius of that primary development. So you nod your head, you're aware of this. Would a system like that work in South Africa? If we are talking about densification, would a system like that help alleviate poverty? Would it help socializing different cultures? Would it help bring together the multiple of cultures that we have as South Africans into that new city, that happy city, that densification city? I guess that's my question. And then just a statement on AI. I've been thinking a lot about the relevance of designers given the ease of AI. But then I've had a number of students who try to outwit us as lecturers using AI. And I realized that it's very recognizable when the person applying the AI doesn't have the experience or the knowledge. And it sort of soothed me to know that you do need the knowledge, you do need the skill, you do need to make the mistakes to realize what works, what doesn't work, in order to take on AI and then reinterpret it into something that does work. So that's just a comment, but the first would be the question to the panel, please.
I've got an interesting thought about that, because I think to actually force a developer to provide housing during a process for other groups of people and stuff is counterintuitive. I think one should be more proactive in changing the zoning scheme to allow for developers to develop a lot larger, bigger buildings that become more cost effective and more feasible. So the where we are now, the difference between the cost of actually building and selling is so little, and the margins are quite small. So, and it's a massive risk. So, to force a developer to provide housing just adds to that burden, where I think it actually drives up the cost of housing in the inner city by putting an extra burden on these developments, without giving the developer additional bulk. And I'm not saying about 10% additional bulk doesn't add enough to make it feasible. It needs to be double the bulk. So, and that will naturally drive down the price of apartments in town, because you've got more units that's available to more people. So I think it should be seen in a different way. I think it's totally counterintuitive to force people to provide stuff. It should be a free market where you allow people to develop a lot more dense buildings, and that would naturally drive down the prices of units. And that's happening all over the world. People are in towns, the prices are just going up and up and up, because people don't have that density. The zoning schemes are too restrictive, and the gap and the risks are too big, and that just drives up the cost of actually developing and living in town. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think I want to add on to Theo. I mean, like David said, like I want to venture more than 90% of his purchasers are investors. They're not owner-buyers. And with most of the developments in Cape Town, that's the case. Like, how do we get owner-buyers into these places? Like, we have tenants. I mean, there's rental shortage. So these investors are making more money. Money makes money. But I think, like, to add on to what Theo is saying, like, most of us, when we go onto Arc Daily and we go to social housing, that's where we kind of go to see what the next luxury development for South Africa would be, because that's where we're competing. Like that's where we find our inspiration for luxury to some countries' social housing. And I think, like a week ago, we had a fire in Johannesburg, which was an incredible tragedy, and it broke my heart, because it's a building that I drive past quite a lot, and it's an area where we have an opportunity to do more, to be better. I mean, who is better placed to solve the housing crisis in this country than architects? And like, how much are we actually doing to solve that? Like, really, let's think about that. Like, when we're pushing the next development, the next thing, like how much are we doing to stop 550 people living in a building that was originally meant as an office building that was hijacked at some point and then burns down, and we lose 78 people. Like, I mean, that's really sad, and we should be doing more. So I think I completely agree with Theo. Like, the answer is not to force guys, because then guys are just going to stop developing, and we're never going to get to a point where we're actually solving the crisis.
I don't know if I should say anything, because I think genuinely at this moment, people actually feel bad for me. So if I say something, because you've got to really, no. Look, this is a very, I think you even knew it was going to be like, maybe call it a controversial topic, but I feel like I'm in a safe space, so I'll speak my mind. I don't think it does anything, if I could be absolutely honest. If you in my 10-year history with Signatura, basically that's we're 11 years now. I've probably built and developed somewhere in the order of, I don't know, 1,500 apartment units. So how many of those should have been affordable, mandated, without the fact that if it had been mandated affordable, would the projects have gone together or not? 20%, 30%, how many? So now I've put a few hundred at the most. In a 11 or 12-year career, I've put 200 or 300 apartments in the marketplace. It's nothing. It's a great headline. Developers have to put inclusionary housing in or around. Beautiful headline. Everyone hates developers. Screw them. It's great. I completely get it, by the way. I'm not, don't cry for me now. I really promise you. I don't feel bad. But it's a beautiful headline. It will do nothing. It will do nothing to solve what is an unbelievably important problem. If you take those 1,000 apartments that I've built and transferred over, and you compare that to how many apartments or houses have transferred in the secondary market, so the existing market, in that time frame, it's a drop in the bucket. It's not even it's probably a rounding error in the transfer, how many people bought and sold a house. So I asked the question to you guys, why would we take this issue that is affecting everybody and hand it into the laps of a very specific niche business, which is a new off-plan or whatever developers, and say, you guys solve this problem. We created it, apartheid, whatever, and maybe because I'm American, so I don't have the hang-ups as some people about talking about this, but I don't get it. It makes it's one of those kind of cognitive dissonance things where we let it be their problem. Like, I'm gonna even go further because I really am feeling very safe here. If you were white during apartheid, not saying you supported the government, but you just existed, you benefited from that system. Indirectly, directly, it doesn't matter. So why shouldn't you be part of the solution which created this problem? I don't understand it. Why don't you do something that, okay, thank you. So actually, I actually presented this solution to a city official who will remain nameless. I said, take the Group Areas Act. Every area that was considered at the time a white area, when that, and it doesn't matter who's living there now, if they're white or colored or black, or it doesn't matter. Let's think about it. If you bought that house in the 50s or 60s for 40,000 Rand in Sea Point, and now you sell it for 8.5 million Rand, probably worth the same amount of dollars, but it doesn't matter. You've benefited for the fact that there was no demand at the moment. It was only a certain amount of people could buy there, so you got it cheap, and now it's very expensive. Shouldn't you also be responsible for providing some of that money that goes to building houses for people who weren't able to live in Sea Point up until 1994? I think so. I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, that's not cool because no one wants to pay any more taxes and just let the developers sort it out. But if you want to solve a national problem, you have to make it a national problem. If you want it to be a developer's problem, then it'll just be a developer's problem. And then I'll deal with it in the way I can, and half of that time means I won't do it because I can't. But whatever, then developers will sort it out. Anyway.